Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning.
And by
Today,
burning, you mean a sausage stick?
yes,
Okay.
that's the checklist.
Okay.
I've got a sausage sticks, cheese, dip, coffee, spitter. We're good.
Golden.
Yes.
Got the necessities.
Yeah.
Jesse, what'd you do this weekend?
Nothing crazy. No OD on pie of any kind.
Well, that's undershooting.
Yeah, I did undershoot that. I did go on a bunch of stupid calls.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was just the most random, stupid things on the face of the earth. What'd you do?
Well, I just came off of a 96-hour archaeological dig of extracting a lower jawbone of an extinct mouse. It was thrilling and invigorating.
Was that in the Marianas Trench or?
Close. Somewhere in there. We've also got a guest with us today. His name is Howard, like the duck. Howard, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 25. Joined the department in 2016, mid 2016. Left, took a break in August of 2016 for the military. Came back late 2019. Deployed in 18 to 19, and then been doing the same stuff every day.
What when you say deployed, what kind of deployment were you on?
We went to Afghanistan,
Okay. What branch were you in?
Army.
Okay. What attracted you to going into the Army?
Honestly, I didn't see anything with my life going anywhere, so figured it would just be a stepping stone in life or life experience.
Okay. Good. When you came back from Afghanistan, where'd you end up at?
I actually ended up back in Fort Carson,
Okay.
and then kind of finished off my term. With the military, and then, like I said, came back to my hometown in 2019, and now I just work in everyday life and try to do what I can for my daughter.
Excellent. Just a couple of basic questions for you. Do you have any interest in going in the career or paid route in either fire or just public service in general?
I've thought about it a lot in general, with just how young I am. I really don't know. I mean, it's just, I enjoyed serving my community, and I've served the country. Now it's just, what do I want to do?
Yeah. Awesome. That's perfectly fine.
And your current career is kind of related, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, so my current career is actually a little bit of kind of what we do here. I mean, we're kind of like a third-party fire department. We deal with a lot of hazmat stuff, but we also deal with a lot of oil field stuff. So I kind of have my hands in a little bit of everything across the board.
And how are you liking that?
I like it. It's something new every day. I mean, some days it's repetitive stuff. Some days it's different, all different. But then again, some days it's you learning something new and get to bring it back to the volunteer side and maybe teach the younger guys something that they never knew about.
Excellent. We're going to kind of bounce around all over the place today. Howard had no clue that he was going to end up in this. And we just grabbed him and tackled him and held him down, and he's actually duct taped to a pole right now, and I'm holding a microphone in front of him.
It happens sometimes.
Yeah, that's kind of our MO, though. That's how we do this from the first time.
Yeah. Indentured servitude? No?
Yeah.
Sign
Yeah.
here.
Good.
Jesse, what else do we have going on this week?
Oh, it's always busy, and I thought when we sat down we might dive into some of these crazy, weird, just stupid things that we get ourselves off into, and things that shouldn't be in our wheelhouse. But as I've said before, if you've got a job and nobody will do it, give it to the fire department. They'll do it. You know, we clean roads on a regular basis and sweep the streets, and I'm pretty sure that most cities have a machine for that. Ours has one. But we do a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's not necessarily what our job is, but but we inherit that stuff, and we do it, and we gladly do most of it. Some of it we don't gladly do, but for the vast majority of it, we're happy to serve and do. And that's the kind of the rabbit hole I was hoping to dive down a little bit.
My personal favorite is when we get towed to someone's house for contractor work.
Yes. Yeah.
I personally thoroughly enjoy that. And I'm not talking about big storm came through and a limb or a tree fell on someone's house. No. I'm talking about hot water removal, hot water heater removal.
Yeah.
Or
I can't reach this light bulb.
yeah, we get that a lot too. But the smart old ladies in town, what they'll do is they'll wait till the smoke detectors need to be changed. Then you show up for the smoke detectors, and being good junior woodchuck firefighters that we are, we turn around and we ask her, is there anything else you need help with? And then she gives you a list of 97 things.
That was written out and pre-planned
Right.
before you, and all the materials are there, including concreting fence posts and whatever else was on the agenda for that day. I mean,
Or that year.
yeah, that 6 hours later, you're finally getting halfway through the list.
Yeah, things that I've done for smoke detectors: flip mattresses, move furniture, remove an appliance, light bulbs for sure, diagnosed a handful of ceiling fans or any other burned up electrical equipment, and check some breakers, and yes, more. Oh, windows, stuck windows. That's one of my favorite.
You're almost doing a 10-point inspection on the house.
Yeah, we get that.
Kind of crazy stuff have you, in your short time in this field, I know you've gotten to go to something that was just like, why are we here?
I mean, I think about that on a lot of calls. I think one of the best ones is when we did a mutual aid. It was probably 2 o'clock in the morning for or an odor investigation, and the call note said that it smelled like a skunk. I mean, kind of put 2 and 2 together. Something's gonna.
Yeah, I've been on a few of those myself.
You're either gonna get some kind of marijuana, or you're gonna get some trash.
Pepe Le Pew?
Something, and it was trash.
It was trash that time?
It was trash that time.
Yeah, I've been to the, there's this odor, and it's just the trash or lawn clippings. That's another one. Those lawn clippings go to ferment in the trash can in the garage. It's a very interesting odor. It's pretty horrid.
Yeah, it gag a maggot.
Yeah. Yeah, but buzzards puke on that one. But, yeah, that's kind of crazy. We just randomly just got back from going to a burglar alarm.
Yeah, that was stellar at a doctor's office. I do want to add that because there's nothing of value to anyone at a burglar at a doctor's office.
Yeah, we get paged to a fire alarm and get there and figure out that it's a burglar alarm. Now, there's a lot of ways that can happen, and you know, there's alarm companies involved and a lot of people involved in the path of getting us to this call. But in the end, we show up to a burglar alarm that, you know, I'm okay with a little bit of sacrifice, but I don't want to die for a burglar alarm at a doctor's office. I could care less. They could take the whole building.
What's the arguably the most absurd call that you've ever had to help with?
I got called because the parakeet got out of the cage, got out of the house, and was in the bushes across the highway, and they were adamant that I needed to go get this parakeet. So it's, you know, it's a 2.5-inch, 3-inch tall bird, and I'm a fire department. I have nothing in anything I've got other than a 2.5-inch hose to get said parakeet out of the tree. And I'm probably not going to be able to pull that off because I'm not that good of a shot. I spray everywhere when I spray. So that was the most insane thing. And the person was so adamant that that I had this duty to do something about this. I literally could come up with nothing to do. That was the most insane request I'd ever had. It born free. I mean, if you love it, it might return. That was kind of my theory on it.
Yeah, hopefully it gets hungry.
Yeah.
And realizes it can come home.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Godspeed.
Go home and get a shotgun.
Those are my favorites when we get called to assist with an animal in a tree. I mean, they got up there, they'll get down one way or the other.
Yeah, we did a whole podcast on animals and trees and stupid animal stuff, and that one didn't make it into that podcast with the parakeet. But
I had another one with a bull that kicked a vet.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, that guy got teed off on. I completely forgot about that one.
Yeah, but that's legit, and I don't mind going to something like that. And I say I don't mind. I don't mind going to any of it, but just realize that there's some things that we go to that I can't do anything about. I mean, yeah, I can go help you change your tire on the side of the road. I can do that. Is that an appropriate use of resources? I would argue it's probably not, but at the same time, I've done that a lot of times. I've gone out in the public and helped do those things that,
I think for me, I think there's a big difference between being toned out for something is innocuous as changing out smoke detector batteries, and you do offer help to the little old lady. Hey, do you have anything else? And, again, she is 112 years old. I'm not going to expect her or want her to get on a ladder to change out a burned out light bulb. I legitimately have no problem with that.
Right.
What I do have a problem with is when you show up to a 30-year-old man's house and then you end up mowing the front yard.
Yeah, unless he's a quadriplegic.
I managed to have a problem with that. And good, bad, or indifferent, I have been known to ruffle some feathers on telling people on scene, no, we don't do that.
See, if we went to something like that and it was probably a veteran or something that was disabled and they asked us for help, that's probably where it would come, as me being a veteran, come to my heart, like just come natural. And then I would just bring, the resources that we took from the department. Yeah, that's just something where I would take it to heart, and I would bring the resource that we took from the department to where the city or the county could still utilize that resource and maybe get a group of guys together and go help that guy.
Yeah, outside of
the department use.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Sometimes they just need help, and sometimes it's not anything that requires the fire engine or anything like that, and you can just do that stuff outside of the department, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with if you have the time, the resources, the people to help individuals on those calls, because sometimes they have no one else to turn to. We see it a lot in EMS where, you'll get toned to a sick person or something like that, and you get there and they just need somebody to help count their pills or someone to talk to sometimes. And it's not the most appropriate use of the resources, but we do that stuff because it's the right thing to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that game the system and take advantage of that stuff.
Well, I can think of, I don't know how we got corralled into it, but there was a blind guy that needed a pool table moved.
Yeah.
That was...
that right there would make you scratch your head and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. There was some, perhaps words exchanged on scene on that one for what we got toned to and what was actually needed. And I'm sure there was something lost in translation with the dispatch on that. Been known to happen. But, that's what we'd gotten toned to, was to move a pool table.
Yeah.
And then literally the statement by the individual was, well, you're here now, so do it. Aha. No. Bye.
It's not how that works.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of risk, and I'm not the guy that hedges liability as the reason why we don't do anything, But there is a certain amount of risk of doing things like that because you could, you scratch this priceless heirloom pool table moving it, they're going to want somebody to take care of that. And guess what? You were the one that scratched it, so get ready to take care of it. And you can read a lot from the person that's making the request, and in that instance where the person's kind of being obtuse and condescending and all that stuff on the back end of that, that's probably not the person to help because they're going to be the one that's going to come after you when you scratch their floor.
This isn't directly related to obscene calls, but it's a funny side note. So we have and we've talked about it, where we'll go out into the community and change smoke detectors. And every now and then you will stumble into someone that is very OCD. And this particular call, this gentleman, straight up out of the gate, tells us, I need these smoke detectors changed, but guys, I'm very, 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 very particular. He's like, I'm telling you now, just so you know, to please be careful. I frankly appreciated it. It's not that we're not extra careful going into people's houses, but I don't have a problem taking an extra 3 minutes to wrap everything up in a... Yeah, that's us. Might as well just stop there. Sorry about the weird transition you're getting right there. We had a call come in and we had to bail off to go take care of it. And in the process, we managed to lose Howard the duck. He had to fly the coop, so you're going to be stuck with just me and Jesse now. What we were talking about, though, is just kind of the random and absurdity of certain calls that you get called to. And it kind of puts departments in a weird spot, because you get called to be an electrician, you get called to be a street cleaner, you get called to turn water off. And it's real difficult, particularly for an organization like us, because the membership's just going to be sensitive to. It's one thing if it's a blue moon. It's another thing if it starts to become a habit, just because the person that's on call, that's paid for the city or county, won't answer the phone. And they end up calling us out there to handle those events.
Yeah, and the side note of that is if we failed to answer our phone, the world would be in chaos, and we'd know about it. Like they'd be beating on the door of the station to let you know that you guys aren't answering your phone. But when it's these other services in the city or in the county or whatever, they don't answer their phone that they're on call, it's no big deal because the fire department will handle whatever it is. That does rub you. That rubs you in the wrong way.
Yeah, at least from my perspective, and I think it's because I've actually had a lot of these, and I do mean a lot, where it's, why are we here? This truly has nothing to do with us. Why did you call us for the down power line? And it's not to block traffic. We have to prompt to, oh, by the way, you need to call the actual power company. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we've got our hooks in our bucket, and we might as well get up there and fix the power line while we're at it. And we're not trained for these things. The reality is we would double our training to prepare ourselves for all these random events that we get called to be linemen or lumberjacks or whatever it is. I mean, yeah, it kind of goes with what we do, but the reality is we're not the experts in these things, and nor should we be.
I can think of one particular story. This was several years ago. We get called for a downed cable in a road. Show up on scene. Look at the line. Looks relatively innocuous. Start tracing the line in the actual power lines. No, this actually looks like a legitimate insulated power line coming off of that telephone pole. That telephone pole that goes to that transformer, and start looking at where it really fell from, and it looks like that it was attached to a street lamp, old street lamp. But there's nothing there to indicate that the street lamps have been secured, power secured from the transformer. There's nothing there to remotely indicate, and this is in the middle of a neighborhood. And we end up just sitting there agreeing to just leave it alone. And one of our members decides to POV, and he's in the process of just saying, "Oh, well, that's just a telephone line." And just short of tackling him, we managed to get him to stop from grabbing it. And then right on cue, the power company drives over the hill, and the lineman walks up, with his electric sniffer, and it immediately starts to buzz and chirp at him. And he kind of has this toothy grin and looks at us, and he's like, "Well, it's a good thing no one touched it. This is actually pretty hot."
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I went to a crazy deal one time that was a power line that it was a high voltage line, so 7,200 volt primary power fell, and it was arcing to the top of a fire hydrant.
Nice.
That's a fire call. That's my hydrant. I have to, watch this thing melt basically in front of us and block traffic. But no, that's legit. We should go to those things.
What about a tree branch and power lines?
There's literally nothing we can do for that. We lack the tools, the equipment, the training, the safety equipment to be able to handle something like that. I would argue that it's probably so stupid of us to even engage in something like that. Like beyond, oh yeah, you need to call somebody. Like I get that, just that first look, and I know it happens to the law enforcement guys and gals too. They get called to that first look to go figure out what this is before the real people that need to handle the situation get called to it, whether it be, animal call or turns out the building's on fire, whatever it is, it happens to them too. So we all get blessed with this stuff. And that first look, okay. But once we say, hey, that's out of our wheelhouse, that's out of our wheelhouse. That's the end of it. And we
So you're saying that if you got towed to a water leak out of a city main, and you showed up and you theoretically advised your local dispatching agency that this is a water leak from a city main, and you cleared scene, that you got towed again to address it?
Yeah. How are you going to address it? Did you bring your backhoe and your JB weld? I don't know what you need to fix that. Haven't got a clue.
Something, not this exact scenario, but something very similar to that just literally happened this weekend, where there's certain things where, no matter how star-spangled awesome your department is, you just aren't equipped for being able to take care of that task. And when you advise, in this case, dispatch, that you can't take care of said problem, and to notify the water department, that assuming that the water department doesn't answer, you can tone us again. It's going to achieve the exact same result, and some feelings are going to get hurt in the process.
Well, and let's just take that one step farther. So you tone the fire department again to the thing that they can't handle, and we're going to just roll with this water leak. So you tone them for the second time, and they go there and they find the same thing, and they tell you they can't do it, and you need to call the water department. And then 2 hours later, you tone them to the same thing again. Well, 3 or 4 times into this, somebody's going to have the bright idea that they're going to try to rectify whatever the situation is.
Yeah, because they're going to want to stop going to
They're going to want to stop going to it. And at that point, you just basically jeopardize their safety, because they're really just trying to make the madness stop at that point. And they're going to do that. They're going to make that effort to make the madness stop. So do you want to be that person that just puts them in the spot where they have to basically go way outside of what's safe and rational for them to do to continue down the path to make the madness stop? I mean, it's no different than if you were to send the fire department to the rabid bobcat or whatever that's in the park, or there's a mountain lion loose in the school. That's not what we need to do. That's way out of our wheelhouse. Yeah, we can probably figure out how to handle this, but the collateral damage may be stupendous. I mean, we just go ahead and burn the building down.
Yeah, sometimes it's just so mind numbing dealing with it. And in the defenses sometimes for the dispatchers, maybe even a lot of the time, the call is only dispatched to the ability of the information that they're able to drag out of the person calling 911 and asking for help. And again, people do directly lie to them.
Oh yeah, and it's not a finger point to them, because it's for every one time that it was truly their fault or directive to do that, there was probably 1,000 times that they just got roped into it inadvertently, or had bad information, or were just truly at a loss for what to do themselves. That is another part of it. They don't know. They just know that you go to all these things and you take care of it. So why can't you take care of whatever this other thing is?
Yeah, I mean, and again, the nature of some of this is just going to be pure chaos, and there's a lot of it just sometimes need to be chalked up to it. But it makes it exceedingly hard to have that really strong, awesome, good relationship with all the agencies around you if you're continually mistakenly toned into scenarios that are truly not applicable to you. Here, I'll give you the perfect example of this because it's a life safety thing. We get toned to a fire alarm. Reading through the call notes, it's not a fire alarm. It's a motion detector in a doctor's office. Doctors' offices don't have any sort of weird fire sensing / smoke motion detecting sensors. It's a motion detector. It says it's on the front door. That's not a fire alarm. It's burglar. So potentially dangerous for us to just waltz into there.
Well, and you run into it in traumatic injuries and a number of things like that, where you go to this, laceration, let's just say, and you get there and you figure out it's a stabbing or whatever the case may be, that just the information that in general was bad information that put you in that spot where you should have never been.
Yeah, or maybe not even just strictly from a personal life safety and hazard point of view, but just from the perspective of trying to get as much information as possible. You get toned to an unknown problem. It's a forklift that rolled over on a guy.
Yeah, you know what the problem is.
Yeah.
If it says in the notes that that's what happened, then you know what the problem is.
Another kind of pet peeve for me, and I suspect a lot of people probably get to deal with this. Not all suicide threats are created equal. And us getting toned to a suicide threat and staging, well, what are the 50 factors associated with the suicide threat? Well, in our case, we don't have access to the law card. And all we get is the most general, basic, stupendously HIPAA-approved, so neutral gray lack of information that you have no clue what is going on with this call. Okay, fine. You're supposed to stage, so you're safe. Right? Well, not necessarily. What was the suicide threat? Was it a quadruple murder? Because I don't want to stage even on the same side of town as that. And there's just certain parts of information that really does need to be shared with the fire and EMS crews that are responding to some of these calls.
So interesting deal like that. And where I came from is a lot smaller, and so there would typically be 1 to 2 deputies on duty for an entire county at any given time, and maybe 1 or 2 DPS troopers, and then 1 or 2 city police officers for a relatively large county. So chances are, if you're going 20 miles, 10 miles out in the county, the best thing you were going to get was one law enforcement officer. So we would get toned to stuff all the time, and just poor information or bad information or whatever, and we'd be the only ones there. There was no staging, there was no standby, because it could be an hour before the deputy could make it to your side of the county from where they were, especially if they were on another call. So we get called to it was unresponsive. It wasn't unconscious,
Okay.
it was unresponsive. Called in by the mother. So we get there on the ambulance and waltz in there, and we've got this guy that's kind of in this catatonic state. You know, he's kind of like Cameron on Ferris Bueller, just sitting there. Okay, this is weird. Don't know what's going on. Try to do some assessment and neurological exams. He makes some grunting noises. He doesn't really move. He doesn't do anything. We're working through it. We get the cot in there. I think we did get some help because he was a pretty big guy. Working on this situation, and then all of a sudden, catatonic guy stands up, has a knife in his hand that he's been harboring by his side that none of us recognized, and takes a swing and tries to decapitate my paramedic partner.
Did he hit?
No, he
Okay,
missed
good.
because I did a quick shove and pushed him back into the chair that he came up out of, and then immediately shoved the cot on top of him, and we all scampered out the front door. But then we're sitting in our units in front of the house waiting for law enforcement, wondering, hey, should we go down the block? Do we hang out here? What is the protocol for this? Because no one knows. And it just puts you in a real bind. Incidentally, the guy ran out the back door and took off, and never saw him. Or when the law enforcement finally did get there, and they went in the house and searched, and Mom came out the front door with us because she was scared to death. And so we're all standing out there in the front yard. Hopefully he's not going to just open fire on us, but he scampered out the back door and was long gone. We never even knew he was gone. Whatever situation caused that guy to be in that state, and we never knew. We just went back and retrieved our stretcher and left.
I had kind of a not similar story, but kind of similar circumstance, and I definitely do not blame dispatch or anyone for the setup of this call. It was just a medical call that went sideways. Group of us are sitting up here at the station. It's like 3:00 in the morning. Comes in as seizures. We go to it. Make scene, and it's the classic like horror movie like setup. So this is where everyone gets killed by Jason.
Yeah, there's chainsaws hanging from the ceiling.
in size, and chains with balls and spikes on the end, and we waltz in there. And as soon as you walked in the door, it was pretty obvious that they were partaking in some probably some mind-altering personal medications that they'd issued themselves.
Modern chemistry.
And this guy, he is just zonked out on the couch. Doesn't really look like a seizure patient that's postictal, but he is drooling enough on himself and kind of in a weird position where someone having a seizure would flop down and end up there. So the significant other in this story, we're asking, the general questions, and we're walking up to him. And she immediately jumps to her feet and says, "Don't move." And me and the other guy I'm with, we both have the reactions of like sleeping cows. Just kind of look at her. Needless to say, it's safe to say, under just first person appearance, that she's definitely practicing some personal chemistry lessons. And kind of ask her, like, why not? And she's like, well, I just don't want you to wake him up. You're the one that called us. Oh, that's right. Yeah, go ahead. And it's like, excellent. And I turn and look at the guy that I'm with. And we always joked, always had this stupid joke that if we were ever on scene and something went terribly wrong and we wanted someone to go call the police immediately, you know, and shoot flares and call the air cav in, that we would have a code word. And I look at this guy and I'm like, hey, and I use our code word. And of course, he just blankly stares at me. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? And it's one of these long and like silent conversations where you try and like shoot laser beams out of your eyes and then like dart to the door and, you know, and then you say your code word again.
Yeah, go get the rectal Halligan.
Now, in our case, it was a horizontal stabilizer. And the second one, he got it, thankfully. And he's like, oh, yes, that would be perfect right now. Yes, it would be. And I tried to go with him, and the lady was, well, she wasn't having any of it. And it's like, you know what? We're just, whatever. We're going to take the catastrophic risk. We're going to send Fudgy off to go get the horizontal stabilizer. And I am going to stay here. Because at least that way she doesn't do anything. And I should talk about the setup of this living room. This isn't like when you walked into this house, this wasn't the kind of living room where you would be like, oh yeah, this is the place to make quick motions. There was an alligator in a tank, like a small fish tank, a whole bunch of other critters. There was literally a small arsenal in there, which is, I mean, it's Texas. Some people get pretty worked up about walking in a room and seeing a gun, but I mean, it is not uncommon for us to have an average going medical and literally have shotguns, AR-15s, pistols, rifles, kitchen tables, bed stands. Do we get complacent with it? Probably a little too complacent with it, but the fact of the matter is it's just gun culture down here. And there's everyone's armed and everyone has more than one, and it's just fact of life here. And thankfully, our local police department, to their very great credit, was very familiar with this address, and they were actually in the process of walking up the front door when Fudgy was heading outside. So realistically, I don't think I was inside alone with her for
Seconds.
We'll say 10 seconds. It may have been 15. But yeah, it turned out it wasn't seizures.
Bad trip?
Yeah. Wow, he OD'd. So what happened? Once I got a little closer to him and he was laying on his arm funny. And I mean, well, frankly, if I was passed out in that position and I was laying on my arm, I would want someone to roll me over and get me off my arm. And that's literally what I was doing, is I was just kind of getting the body in a better position so I could actually evaluate him. And there was a handful of pretty fresh track marks running up and down that right arm. And it's like, oh, now we see what the problem is.
Yeah. And we've got something that will make you puke everything that ever went in your body out.
Yeah. And then at that point, you know, PD's there and everything's all fine and grand, and they get to deal with the significant other because she was still very attentive. Oddly enough, cooperative, though. Usually rare combination there. And old boy came to there in a little bit, and he was thrilled.
Yeah, no, they get mad. They get so mad.
But that's just it's a good example of that. Is you know don't be complacent about some of this stuff too, because your frequent flyers are the ones where that's going to be bad. Same thing, you get to the point where you're not reading the call notes. Arguably, dispatch is going to have the same problem. It's a frequent flyer. You go to Big Dan for the 800th time this month. How many of you are actually reading them call notes this time? You're not. You got as far as reading that address and then just wept inside and then drug your carcass to the apparatus and responded. Never once actually glanced at the call notes to see if anything had changed this time. Yeah. And I've seen that with your true high volume frequent flyers, and we did have one. I wasn't exaggerating when I said that 800 calls a month. This guy was getting to the point where he was literally calling 10, 15, 20 times a day. Thankfully, our dispatch kept toning us out to that. So that was particularly awesome. And then finally there was a point there where we just said no mas.
Yeah, everywhere has that guy or gal. That's a common thing, and that is a problem because you do become complacent of whatever it is that they're calling for, and it's usually the same thing over and over. And then one time you show up and it's cardiac arrest,
right?
And you're not prepared for that.
Yeah, or they're suicidal,
right? That there's sometimes actual things wrong with those people that most of the time there's nothing wrong with. I mean, most of them were in a state of, I would hate to say disrepair or a bad state physically, mentally, and that bleeds over until they actually have a real problem. You'd go to the guy that has seizures all the time. Well, one time he's going to have a bad one, or it's going to be a stroke, and it's not really a seizure, but you're lollygagging and figuring he'll be out of the seizure and post-tictal by the time you get there. Well, this time it wasn't that, or he had the seizure and he fell on a butcher knife.
Right.
It's a little different story.
Yeah, we had this story doesn't end well in the long run. We had an individual in our area that was, boy, if you needed to get anyone brushed up on how to handle their OD patients, just watch that address. Because that's what it was. Every time it was an OD. And we'd show up. Of course, that's obviously priority call. You can get there now. And that was another classic. Really needed to read the call notes on that one, because there was a chunk of information right there at the bottom that was kind of critical. He OD'd on something different this time, and there was a bunch of people that were trying to work this scene, and the problem is that he just didn't get found in time. Usually every call before that, he had always OD'd on something very specific, and Narcan was there to save the day. And he had already, I would argue, he was close to rigor mortis. Wow. Not in it, but he was there. He had been down a while, and they're pushing their Narcan on him, and they're doing light bumps, and it's not bringing him around. Well, the problem is that in this particular case, Narcan's not going to work on this. And it's not that they weren't doing anything else, but no one was expecting the reaction that we were getting, even though he was already in it. There was no debate about how far gone he was. He'd been down a while. This was a known thing, but the medics were going to work him because that's
your job.
That's what you do. And, like I said, in this particular case, the Narcan was never going to do anything. Not in this one. It was going to have to be to just bag him and do compressions and get him to the hospital.
What about the lumberjack jobs? I've seen a lot of those where you're going to. I get it if a tree falls on your house or your car or a person. That's an emergency for us. But a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it. Do you still call the fire department to come cut it up?
Right.
That's the real question.
Yeah, the whole street sweeper career thing, that's really what I'm about. Yeah, that's I've had that in the past, where you'll get toned to something. Again, this is Texas, so we have oak trees. Oak trees are big. They're also very heavy. And most departments don't either carry a 100-ton crane with them or have a chainsaw with a 60-inch bar. So when you have an 80 or 90,000 pound tree across the road, it doesn't matter if we cut it up. One, you're not going to be able to cut it up because the bar physically won't pass through the tree. And two, you would have to cut it up into 3-inch slices because you couldn't move it.
Right.
Because if you're truly not familiar with an oak tree, 15-inch tree, 10 feet long, that's probably going to be in the ballpark of 600 pounds, maybe more, especially if it's like been raining a lot. This is not a pine tree. It's not an aspen. It's not a cedar. Oak is dense and ungodly heavy.
Oh, and then you've got walnut trees and maple trees and all
Right.
these other hardwood trees that are just insane, and they're huge. And there's nothing wrong with, and I guess that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with realizing your limitations as an individual or as a department, and just saying, hey, we don't need to do this. We don't need to be the guys that mess with this. Now, if it's a totally different scenario, especially if life is in peril, if said tree is falling across somebody's legs, whatever, the tree guy had an accident and the tree fell over on him, yeah, we're going to airbag it. We're going to do everything in the world, but we're not going to cut it and split it and stack it.
Yeah.
That's the difference. We're not going to make that extra step to put it all back to normal. It's not our job to put things back to normal. It's our job to stop the event that's happening. Once the event stopped, that's where our job should end.
What about let's go to something real serious. Get a ton of rain, got a flash flood. Your department has no swiftwater stuff, no swiftwater rescue training, no boats, no real rope rescue training. How's the department handle that? We'll just say it's the proverbial someone drove into a low water crossing and the water's screaming through there.
I've lived through this and been in that situation. I will tell you that our 5-ton brush truck was our biggest asset for a lot of that stuff. If we felt like it was, because it could be 2 foot deep and it's not even to the axle yet on that thing. So if we felt like it was slow enough, shallow enough, we could drive over to where it was or back over to it and scuttle the people onto the back end of the truck and drive away. That's what we did. But I had I don't know if it's a Texas thing, but there's a term called the river came down. Well, when the river comes down, the river doesn't come down. The river goes up.
Right.
Feet rapidly. And what it is it's basically a wall of water that's coming down the river from rain that's miles away in most cases. So one night we get paged to some stranded people out in the middle of nowhere. The river had come down about 14 feet, and they'd crossed the river when the water level was inches deep on a low water crossing, and they were over on the other side hunting or whatever they were doing, and while they're doing what they're doing on the other side, the river comes down. It never rained where we were at. It wasn't raining. It rained upstream 20 miles away, and it took it a day to get there. And so this 12 or 14 feet of water now is got them cut off, and they're kind of in a little, they can't get back to the ranch that they're on. And we look at this thing for a while and think about, oh, we could get a boat, we could put in over here. And I mean, this is rapids. This is serious water, and we're not trained for it. You know, we know enough to know I'm not going to swim across there, and the giant tree that's floating by is going to probably take me out. So we've got communication with the people. We're yelling at them from one side to the other, and it's 200 or 300 feet. And you know, one of them says, well, I need my medication. I'm a diabetic. I've got to have my medication. I haven't had it. We've been over here for so long. You know, you look at the clock and you're like, yeah, I'm going to bet you're going to be all right for just a little while. So we end up waiting for daylight. River's still roaring. We drive the probably 20 miles around, come through 4 other ranches to get to them, and then drive them back out that way, and the vehicle just stays over there on the dry land until the river gets back to normal.
Yeah, another 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. And that's one of those deals where you've just got to know where those limitations are, because we could have done some really stupid things. I mean, I got as far as I put the wetsuit on and then went, no, I really don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah, I can personally attest to. I should state by saying I absolutely hate water rescues. I truly believe that there's what we do is not inherently dangerous, but there is danger that can be associated with it, and it can just, like Murphy, kick in the door and be surprised I'm here. But swift water and water rescues, that is a different realm of dangerous. You really are truly skirting on such a fine edge there, and you can have all the PPE in the world and you can have all the training in the world, and just sometimes it goes bad.
Well, you don't have gills.
Yeah.
That's the kicker in that. You don't have gills.
And we had a swiftwater body recovery, not a rescue. Confirmed fatality, known fatality. Been under the water for well over an hour. And without going into a ton of details on it, the recovery went bad. And the boat went over, and 4 people went in the drink. And luckily, our saving grace here is that everyone had their PPE. And they all floated like corks downstream, except for one guy. He managed to stay on the boat that was now pinned against a tree. Same tree that had the body recovery. And other than the original victim, we got so lucky on that. And the question is what on earth were you doing? Why? Why are you doing this? And this is in an area that when it does flood, these are very large floodplains. The water's moving exceedingly fast, in excess of 20 knots. Standing waves of 10, 15 feet. Whitewater conditions. And, you just truly, how much are you risking here for what?
And that's a tough one, because we're so conditioned to rectify whatever the given situation is. And, you know, I hate to be that armchair quarterback, but sometimes in a situation like that, your best plan may be to wait.
I would argue that they all should have been Baby SEAL Club the second that they were trying to get in the water. And these are my own guys, so I can say that they all literally should have been whacked in the back of the head until unconscious, and then dragged away, and then handcuffed, until the rain and the flood ended, and give them time to think about what they were about to do. That was asinine. And yeah, okay, we lost equipment. That was the worst thing that happened there in the absolute best case scenario, in the absolute worst deployment and idea ever. We got so lucky.
Yeah, we went through so many ideas that night with the river, and I mean, from we were gonna call a medical helicopter to come in. The ceiling was too low because it was cloudy. We went through all these scenarios of how we were gonna handle this, and ultimately, it boiled down to my decision to no, we're gonna just not, and we're gonna wait for a safer time. We're gonna go around. We're gonna take this 5-hour detour to go cross country and pick these people up and take them back out versus do anything with that water. That water's bad.
Yeah. And it's all kind of got a direct theme and tie-in with what we were just talking about of, sometimes you get just a crap assignment, and sometimes you have to make a decision with it. Truly understanding that decision might literally kill that person. There's a chance. Versus how many people are you going to put into risk for that? And they called you because you are the fire department. You are the one that's supposed to have the answer to it.
Yeah, whether you do or not.
Right. And there's no general junior woodchuck guidebook that has all the answers. Some of it really does come down to just being able to make your best decision. I can think of another really wild one that we got toned to. Same thing. Dispatch wasn't 100% sure what the hell was going on with it. We get on scene, and it's a truck that's leaking stuff. They were pulling, it was an 18-wheeler. They were pulling out of a parking lot or some other crap like that. And I can't remember if they sideswiped a tree or if they got sideswiped pulling out on the road. I can't remember that part. But at the end of the day, the truck driver was fine. I think there was another person in there. I think they sideswiped the truck. Person in the vehicle was fine. The problem is what was leaking out of the truck. And in this particular case, at face value, when you talk to the driver of the truck, he said it's just water. Okay. Think about that for half a second. Well, only water I know of that's transported around here is frack water. And, look at this critter for another half a second longer and start to kind of realize, that's all going right into a storm drain. I wonder how bad this is actually about to get. And it did. That actually escalated to a whole new level of terrible. Because after a few minutes, we were able to finally get a hold of a dispatcher with the company, and the dispatcher, he kind of went into high-strung mode almost immediately, and he just said, yeah, it's an environmental problem, pretty serious one, and we need to do anything and everything to get that fixed right now. And his point was, is there anything that you can do for it? Well, I have some kitty litter. There's about 10 gallons of it. The truck's holding, 80,000 pounds of your stuff? Let me check. Yep, it's not enough. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I've seen a molasses truck with molasses pouring down the bar ditch. Believe it or not, milk, molasses, any of those trucks, that becomes a hazmat incident. There is definite environmental issues that happen even with something that's food and as simple as raw milk. The bacterial problems that arise from it. Like, they dig up the bar ditch for that stuff. It's a serious deal. The molasses, they dig up the bar ditch for the molasses. It's there's problems there. I mean, and realize that when we're doing whatever we're doing, we're maybe building a dike around it and trying to keep it into a certain area or the smallest area that we can shovel dirt and keep it into. But somebody else is doing a major cleanup on that stuff. And even with that, the frack water is probably 10 times worse than milk or molasses. And I've seen both of those.
That turned out to be a huge problem for that company. I know that. Usually when you have a wreck at 3 o'clock in the morning, getting company representatives out there, much less with crews and stuff, is usually a month-long process. I swear to God, they were there within 10 minutes.
Wow.
And starting to do the good work. But yeah, that's just, it goes both ways. So really, I mean, towards the end of this podcast, we've kind of switched from absurd calls to calls that we've unintentionally screwed up just through complacency. And then, to kind of get on the backside of that is, you show up to a call that seems pretty routine, mundane, and you get there and it's not that. And being able to know when to, throw in the towel, no mas, and call for help or admit, I need help, or the flip side of that, going back to this stupid tree, at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it. What are we supposed to do with it? There's nothing we can do with it. There's literally other entities that exist that are specifically designed, engineered, and intended by cities, counties, regions, and states, and the feds that are truly designed to take care of these events, whether they're minor or major.
Yeah. And not every job just goes to the fire department.
And you think you're sitting there doing the company a favor by helping them, dig ditches to help spread the fluid that's spilling out of the truck all over the place. No. That's not how that's supposed to work. And I realize that not everyone's has a hazmat background or even hazmat awareness. But if you read the hazmat books, very rarely do they ever say, go in there and make sure you help spread the product throughout the environment.
So on that hazmat note, have a call one afternoon for a motor vehicle accident, MVA, in a common intersection where lots of MVAs happen. Bebop on up there, what we see. What do we find when we get there? A farmer with a 500-gallon diesel tank on a trailer that got T-boned by a pickup. So the 500 gallons of diesel is leaving the tank as fast as possible. It's headed for the ground. And trail of diesels, 3-4 blocks running down the gutter of the street at this point. And the real good part about this was the impending thunderstorm that was coming.
Right.
And it's about 3 or 4 more blocks to the tributary that's going to carry it on to the river, to the lakes, to wherever it's going to go.
Where the exceedingly rare and highly sensitive, yellow-bellied, speckled salt trout's at.
Yeah. And here's 500 gallons. So you do the normal things. You go try to rub soap in it and use the plug and dike and do those things to try to get it to stop coming out. And unfortunately, it busted the seam on the tank. So it's
your hosed.
Yeah, it's coming out. It's coming out no matter what. And there was a lot of wreckage around it, so that made it better. So got all the dry sorb, the kitty litter that's on the trucks, which is in that 10-gallon range, which is about what most fire trucks have on them. And we go try to build a little dike in the curb and stop it. And, of course, it overtakes that one. we call for some more units, and it overtakes that one. And we're shoveling dirt out of the bar ditch, trying to build a dam to stop it. And we did manage to get a city dump truck to bring a load of sand. They happened to be driving by. They had the load of sand in the dump truck. Great, dump this out right here. This turns into a nightmare for the city. We got it stopped. It all ends up in the sand. Thunderstorm hasn't made it yet. We get the road, city, street department to come bring a loader and pick all this sand back up. We sweep it all up. We do all the things to keep the 500 gallons of diesel from making it to the creek. The city gets stuck with the disposal on the dump truck loads of sand and kitty litter and contaminated whatever due to the farmer. Because I don't know if you know it, the farmer doesn't have insurance to haul 500 gallons of diesel on a trailer. He's not a transport company.
That's kind of weird how that works.
Yeah, he's a farmer. And that's a big issue, and it's a big issue for your city or your governing body to deal with that, because it's thousands and thousands of dollars for basically this dirt to go through an incinerator to burn the diesel off of it and then get bagged up and disposed of wherever it gets disposed of.
What ended up happening with that?
The city ended up having to foot the bill on it.
Probably the closest thing that I've seen to it is as terrible as the leaking frack water truck was. Believe it or not, that's not the worst one I've seen. So we have a fast food place that's 24 hours next to one of our main thoroughfares. And we had one of the, I'm going to call it, for lack of better words, one of the ultra long haul trucks, semi trucks, that pulled around the back of this place and then tried to pull through the parking lot. Well, the parking lot has a very weird approach on the backside. And anyone in a semi-truck has, we'd never take our ladder truck through this because there's no way it's not going to get hung up. And this semi-truck is in the process of going through this big transition, and he had just filled up his tanks with diesel, and he ripped the bottom of his tanks out going across this transition, and he dumped, I think, 200 gallons of diesel.
That's about what it normally is
in this parking lot. Well, when we get on scene, in this case, dispatch said this is a mess because they had a local PD there that was working security for the restaurant. And so we have a heads up before we even get there that this thing's a complete diabolical mess. And show up, and basically the last trickles are coming out of the tank by the time we get there. And there's this big blue thing, two of them, under the truck. And I don't know what it is. Well, we get there, pull up, and some rednecks visiting this restaurant at 3 o'clock in the morning had kiddie swimming pools in the back of their truck. And they threw them under this truck. And they caught probably
20 gallons, 30 gallons?
No, unfortunately, they caught a lot more than that. They probably caught 40 gallons on each side.
Wow.
Maybe 50. And then, of course, you have this expanding lake diesel in this parking lot. And that truck driver, who's doing everything in his power to shockingly try and leave that scene as fast as possible. Thankfully, he got stuck there. We're dealing with lake diesel and ended up using probably close to 1,000 pounds of Absorbol for that. He's in the process of trying to leave, and it's like, hey, no, you still get to deal with, your two minor lakes of diesel. You've got 2 kiddie pools of diesel you need to figure out. Of course, the record driver, they brought in a semi-record driver for this. He's thrilled. And it's like, dude, I don't care. That is the driver's problem. The driver's trying to leave with you. He can't leave until you have addressed the diesel, including the 1,000 pounds and the 2 swimming pools. So I don't know what to tell you. Call a company. He should have a company on speed dial. Well, that's hence why he's trying to get out of there. Because he doesn't.
That's a bill.
And it's turning into just a colossal mess for the restaurant. Of course, the restaurant does not want Lake Diesel or Lake Diesel's sandy kitty litter shores. And the manager of that restaurant is highly interested in getting them out of there with Lake Diesel and kitty litter shores. Yeah, that was a colossal mess. And the whole thing was contained in actually it was probably a 70 by 70 square, maybe a hair smaller than that. We'll say 40 by 40.
Yeah, and it's everywhere and can happen at any given moment.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, we could ramble on for hours and hours about random fuel spills. I think we'll just go ahead and call it with that, unless Jesse, you have another story you want to go through.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to It Tastes Like Burning. And of course, if you ever have questions, concerns, comments, theories, conjectures, interjections, inquisitions, or convictions, you can always email us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. I'm Matt.
I'm Jesse.
Have a good evening.